Hello and welcome to John's Author Diary for the weekend in August the 5th, 2018. This past week I've been on holiday. So I went for 7 days to Castle Douglas in Scotland. Now I've not been to this area of Scotland before, so it was really nice to explore places like Kirkcudbright and go on some forest walks and around lochs and things like that. Digit certainly had a good time on some of the beaches and swimming in the sea, that kind of thing. So in terms of actual work, I've been thinking through some of the ideas for my epic fantasy series, so that is actually coming together quite nicely. So far I've avoided talking about things like money and economics within the fantasy world, and this is because I've not had a solution to that yet. But I went to a museum in Kirkcudbright and there was an exhibition about silver, and in the later Roman period, something called hack silver was used in Scotland as a currency. Now what this was basically pieces of silver that could have been hacked from bowls, vessels, jewellery, that kind of thing, and then they would be weighed in exchange for goods. And so it's that nice bridge between a barter system and a monetary currency. And so I'm going to use something like that, I think, in my fantasy world. So I've re-downloaded Hard Times by Charles Dickens, so I'm now about a third of the way through that. It's a really bizarre book. I don't know if it's intended to be bizarre, maybe it's just because I'm so used to reading things like fantasy and science fiction, but it's got some very strange characters in that book. I also finished the book A Brief History of the Samurai, and to be honest I was a little bit disappointed with what I wanted to get from that book. And so there was very little about social history, there was very little about the actual philosophy of the samurai and the ethics. So I ended up reading a book from the 1890s called Bushido, The Soul of Japan. And now I think as a historical text it's very flawed. And I think there's a lot of things like about presumptions, about races and things like that wouldn't fly in a modern academic setting. But what interested me was trying to get to the core of this philosophy and this way of seeing the world. And my attitude going in is, even if it's historically inaccurate, that doesn't matter because I'm thinking about it in terms of a fantasy world anyway. So that was actually really useful as a research tool for fiction, but I don't think I'd recommend it for actual historical research. So next week I need to finish my second otaku story. So we launched the first book of that just over a week ago and the reviews have been coming in and a nice trickle of sales. So I'm really pleased with how that's going. And so my next story is inspired by the movie A Wind Named Amnesia, which came out in 1993. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually playing off Lynn's story. So he's written about sentient uplifted rats. Now I'm going to write about the same situation from a human perspective. And what I'm hoping is that I can change the meaning of Lynn's story by doing that. So that's going to be an interesting experiment. And as well as doing that, I need to carry on my edit of The High Priestess, because I think I'm going to start launching these in September. I think I had the realisation the other day that because of stepping away from Blind Reset, I've only actually had one proper release this year, and so I'm starting to feel the squeeze of that a little bit financially. So I definitely need to get the ball rolling with this fantasy series as soon as possible, and then I'll be able to release these novellas every month. I'll get the first 3 out in September, just to get people into the series. And then I think something like the 15th of the month is when they'll come out. So I've had no questions this week, but if you want to send me a question, it's at JL Cronshaw on Twitter or john@johncronshaw.com. That's JONCRONSHAW. You can now follow me on Instagram. So it's John Cronshaw Author, one word on Instagram. If you'd like to check out any of my other podcasts, remember I've got Stop Booking Around, which is a podcast where I'm helping my friend write his first novel. And then I've got Otaku on Writing. That's OTAKU on Writing, which is where me and 2 other authors review classic anime movies to inspire our own original fiction. So until next time, cheerio.